Hello, and welcome to the Slate Political Gabfest. October 30th, 2025, the Live from Chicago edition. I'm David Plotz of CityCast. We are live on stage in front of a packed house at the Park West in downtown Chicago. I am joined, as ever, as I have been for practically forever, by my most beloved co-hosts and friends and musketeers. So on my left, but always right, from the New York Times Magazine and Yale University Law School, which if you don't know it, Yale University Law School is like the University of Chicago Law School, but in a small town, is the one and only Emily Bazelon.
Hey. Thank you.
And to Emily's left, a man who's had a busy week. A man who is still the co-anchor of the CBS Evening News, but gosh, I can't wait till he's not. And we get to see the full Dickersonian freak flag fly, John Dickerson. You guys can speak, by the way.
Oh, yeah, we can say something nice about you, but we never managed to somehow.
And David Plotz, everybody.
John, I was thinking that they love you, John.
Oh,
True.
thank you.
John, I was thinking about you, and
Thank you.
I was thinking about you in that you now embody all of American journalism in yourself, in that you post too much on Blue Sky, you are a contributor to The Atlantic, you host a podcast, and yet you are also unemployed. So
Yes.
The only thing you don't have is like, I've started a Substack about public transportation. Please subscribe to it.
It's coming soon.
Yes, a girl can dream.
So we're here. We're here to talk about what's happening in politics this week, but we're also here to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Slate Political Gabfest, which boggles the mind. We haven't done someone told me, and actually maybe saying this out loud will allow someone else to do the research, that we're one of the longest continually going podcasts in the world, and I think we're the longest podcast going that's had the same lineup for as long as we've had it.
So is that good or bad? It's kind of great, but also we're really old.
I'm really old. Really old. This week on the Gabfest, we will be joined by former Chicago mayor, House member, ambassador, presidential chief of staff, and likely 2028 presidential candidate, Rahm Emanuel. Then there's talk of a third term. There's wide-scale gerrymandering efforts. There's efforts to undermine trust in voting. What threat does President Trump pose to the future of American elections? Then we're going to dive into Gabfest history and talk about what discussions, what ideas, what moments in 20 years of talking to each other have most stuck with us and why. Plus, we will have cocktail chatter. I think, Rahm Emanuel, you should come out.
We would love that.
But you'll...
I think.
John, I do want to say one thing. There's an opening on a streets and sanitation job for you. Okay?
For someone with your skills.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you got any references though?
Yeah. I've got to. I got to find some honest work somewhere.
Well, if it's honest, don't come here.
Comes in hot.
We're from Chicago. We can say that. They can't say it.
Yeah, exactly. We can't say that.
Yeah.
No.
We are thrilled to be joined by first-time Gabfest guest Rahm Emanuel. Rahm, and I feel like we can call you Rahm because you have like the Cher quality, one name quality in American politics, has had almost every hard job in politics and also every fun job in politics. He's been presidential chief of staff. He has been a top aide to Bill Clinton. He was an ambassador to Japan, which I think must be the cushiest gig there is. He was the two-term mayor of Chicago, which is the least cushy gig there is.
I would say, just like the record of show, after 3 years, Japan is still an ally. So that's
Well done.
Even after this week?
It was not, well, that's a different thing. During my tenure, I left as an ally.
My sense is that people who are running for president tend to be coy at this period, whether they're going to run for president. But from what I have seen of you, you are temperamentally incapable of being coy. And so you seem to be running for president in 2028. You don't have to say whether you are, but it seems like you are. So welcome to the Gabfest, Your Excellency.
No. Congratulations on 20 years. And being ahead of your time. Nobody knew 20 years ago what a podcast was.
It's true.
Yeah, you paved the way.
We had to give long explanations, and it wasn't clear how to listen to it.
And it also sounded when you were doing it the way, you were talking to your mother and trying to describe why it was okay you were joining the ashram. It sounded like you were doing some funky thing that included incense, and maybe somebody was getting high somewhere. Yeah.
Sadly
And
not.
maybe they were.
So, Rahm, can we start with what's going on in your city of Chicago, where we are? There's been a chaotic and disturbing series of events here.
You've noticed.
Yeah. So there's Operation Midway Blitz, which some of our listeners may not know about, where there's been a militarized immigration action here. There has been a huge amount of protest, tear gassing practically every day. Everyone is in court all the time. There are judicial orders put in and overturned. And of all the cities where Trump has deployed the military and ICE, Chicago seems like the tinderbox. It seems like the one that is hottest, that is tensest, where there is the most potential for something bad to happen. So what should the people of Chicago and the mayor of Chicago be doing now?
Well, first of all, I think they're doing the right thing by taking it to court. That's number one. Number two, the president is consciously, I think the administration is trying to conjure up exactly what the kind of reaction they're getting. I like to say, before the National Guard was sent to Chicago, nobody was tear gassing anybody. Nobody. And they show up, and not only are they tear gassing residents, they're tear gassing police departments. The other thing that it's a slight, smaller thing, but I think this is very relevant. They are recruiting from the Chicago Police Department to have members join ICE. They're going to leave. They're going to have shrunk the Chicago Police Department. And so if the endeavor is to reduce crime, you're going about it in a really weird way. Now, no mayor today, when I was mayor, going all the way back to when Bill Clinton had the '94 crime bill, every mayor would die to have the federal government partner, have put kids into after-school programs, help train police officers in the funding for community policing, go after the gang members using the U.S. Attorney's Office. Every mayor would love a partnership. Not once, LA, Portland, Chicago, DC, Boston, has the federal government ever called the superintendent of the police department or community leaders and said, what can we do to partner with you? So if you're here to actually reduce crime, you may want to call the people on the ground and then not have 300 people from Texas who in about 7 weeks are going to leave. So I think the community, the residents are doing exactly the right thing. The judge, I think, is clearly making the head of the National Guard that's leading the effort here respond. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I've read it correctly, this case is now going to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I feel a little worried about that because I don't know what the answer is going to be.
I don't know if you know this. Even paranoid people have enemies. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
You have a good reason to be worried.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about what you think of Trump's use of federal power. You obviously were in the White House thinking about the constraints, where to push. Do you feel some sense of wow, they're really getting a lot done? It would never have worked for Barack Obama to be aggressive in this way.
Well, there's no way a former University of Chicago law teacher would have thought of doing anything like this.
Yeah.
One back piece to this, which is also relevant. If you remember, I'm not a lawyer, but Brett Kavanaugh wrote an opinion that you basically do racial profiling as part of policing.
Yeah.
But you can't do it as it relates to voting rights, but you can do it as it relates to policing.
Yes.
And I'm not. So look, nobody. We were also, when I say we, being in the Obama White House, the idea that you would call the Justice Department up and say, Eric, I mean, there were many times I wanted to call Eric Holder and tell him who to go prosecute. But you would never have called not only the head of the Department of Justice, you wouldn't call a head of a regulatory agency. The idea that you could just fire summarily somebody that was from the other party because they also all have balances, nobody would have done this. And the other problem is going to be, once the genie's out of the bottle, you cannot put the genie back in. So the idea that everybody goes, let's restore, this sucker's out. And
So
that's going to change the way the executive legislative branch operate.
Right. So that's another thing I was wondering is whether, if and when there's another Democratic president, whether they have to fire a whole slew of people too, because now we're in this world in which we don't trust
Retribution.
people. Yeah. So that's
I
what
mean,
you're
the one
expecting.
I will say, look, the Supreme Court doesn't surprise me. I wish they would have something else. Doesn't surprise me. Corporate leadership, you have a president who's not only destroying the rule of law, but destroying also our universities. They don't really surprise me because they've never shown strength. What has surprised me as a former member of Congress in the House, as a former chief of staff who worked with both parties as chief of staff for the president, I am shocked that the Republican caucuses in the House and Senate have laid down the responsibility. The idea that the government shut down, and you have the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House has said, stay home for a month. I think it's the first time they've met their constituents. Second is there's a funny joke from Barney Frank, but the second thing is the president makes a joke that I'm also the whip. Yeah. The Speaker is an office in the is an institutional office, has totally disregarded his responsibility. The Senate has done that same. You had a senator on a show I was doing on Anderson Cooper, senator from Oklahoma, as it relates to the bombings in the Caribbean, said, this is wrong without hearings. And I'm like, your first name is Senator. Like,
Hold the hearing.
The gavel comes in one size. Use it. And they have abdicated their institutional co-equal branch of government. And that is going to be hard to come back as well.
What's the nature of that surprise, though, Rahm? Because are you surprised that we've come to this pass? Or, because you know why that's happening, right? Or are you surprised it's happening even given where politics is today?
I am surprised given where, I am surprised, I don't mean this gender specific, but they have, Teddy Roosevelt's used in that famous phrase, these timid souls, that they have become timid souls. You're 82 years old. I'm going to pick on Senator Grassley now. He's 90, thank you. He is 93 years old. Don't take this the wrong way. You don't order green bananas when you're 93 years old, okay? That's okay. Okay, number two, you built a profile as a senator holding up the Justice Department, the FBI, you know this as your senator, the Inspector Generals. The President of the United States has fired every Inspector General. Not a peep, not a sound.
Right.
I see no evil, I hear no evil, I speak. You built, if we had, I was saying this the other day to a friend, I said, given the way Louis Freeh treated President Clinton, we never touched him. And they fired Comey, take the Justice Department, tell them to prosecute him. Inspector Generals, eyes and ears are all fired. So I can't tell you what has happened to them. But they are timid souls who have destroyed the institution of the United States House and Senate.
What's your... Just if we can stay in that body for the moment, the shutdown.
In the body? Yeah.
That body of government?
That body of, yes.
We want you to dial in to where you are emotionally.
If we could just focus on that chakra.
Are we doing a yoga class after this together?
How do you grade, and what would you improve on in terms of the Democratic messaging with respect to the shutdown right now?
Well, I do. So let me back up one step on this, John. First of all, you drinking beer on a show there, John? Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard about my week, but we can get you
He's allowed to
one.
have all the beer he wants.
So I lived through the Newt Gingrich in the White House, Newt Gingrich shutdown. And then, while I was mayor, also advising the Obama White House during the Senator Cruz 2013. Those are of the 10 shutdowns, those are kind of the peak shutdowns. Didn't live through the 2018. That was also significant, but didn't live through that. Whoever pulls the pin on the hand grenade, you hold it. Democrats did it. What I'm shocked at is because the way President Trump reacted, he grabbed the hand grenade. So all the downside that could have happened for the Democrats, stopped, because he said, I'm going to fire this, we're going to cancel this. And they just basically, the president grabbed it. And when you look at the opinion polling and the data, it's pretty clear the public thinks he forced the shutdown. So the downside for the Democrats, limited. Yeah. The upside, they're arguing for opening the government, and the Democrats are arguing for the health care for 20 million Americans, particular versus general. I'll give 2 points on this. 2007, we're facing off with President Bush. We, being the House Democrats, we win the majority, Nancy Pelosi Speaker, and we were going to send him an appropriations bill. And I said, look, having been there, don't do that, because it's 800 pages. He picks one line. That becomes the character of that 800 pages. Send him the Children's Health Insurance Program, 10 million kids. It's singular. It divides the president from a Republican caucus, and it's one policy. What we did, Bush vetoes it twice. It's the second bill that President Obama signs when he becomes president. I think the Democrats have done an excellent job focusing, especially with premiums going out right now, on health care. The only thing I would have said slightly, and I said this, so it's not like I'm giving what I'm saying here, I didn't advise. Argentina gets $20 billion, and the 20 million Americans get to lose their health care. As my grandmother used to say, such a deal. So, I mean, that is I'm happy, but a tweak would be $20 billion bailout for Argentina, and 20 million Americans get to pay another $1,000 in health care premiums. Mm-hmm. That would be the only sharper piece I would hit on.
Rahm, there is obviously some conflict within the Democratic Party right now, and you...
That's been true for 30 years.
What I would like you to describe to me, what is the conflict in the Democratic Party, primary conflict in the Democratic Party right now? What is it?
Well, I think, first of all, I think there's a consensus. Let me start as the middle child. There's a consensus on the issue of affordability and people's cost of living. If you look at what Mondani's running on in New York, you look at what Mikey's running on in New Jersey for governor, and you look at what Abigail's running on for all three are running on the same thing. They're not all running on the same solutions. So there's a consensus on the critique. There is not a consensus on the solution. Abigail and Mikey are not proposing 5 government-run grocery stores, free buses, etc. Where there is a consensus, Mondani has pushed, which I think is correct, for daycare, universal daycare. The other 2 candidates running for governor in the other states have also talked about other types of wraparound services to help young families with kids. So that to me I would say there's a philosophical on the solution part, but not a philosophical division on the critique.
Why do you think that the side that Mamdani represents appears to have the energy, the charisma, draws the crowds, the enthusiasm?
Or do
you not think that's a fair characterization?
I don't. I know you find that hard to believe. No, I don't. So let me give 2 recent analysis of why. In the New Jersey primary, you had 6 candidates. Mikey Sherrill, the congresswoman, former Navy intel. Navy pilot, helicopter pilot. You had Congressman Gottheimer. You had the mayor of Newark, the mayor of Jersey City, the president of the teachers union. I forgot who the other person. The 2 more moderate candidates get 50% of the vote in a 6-way race. So I don't think, and I always used to say this to President Obama, I said it to myself when I was mayor, sound is not always fury. Sometimes sound is fury, but sound is not always fury, and you got to know that. You go to the new Democratic primary to replace Congressman Jerry Connolly in Northern Virginia. 11 candidates. It's like going to Baskin and Robbins, okay? You got 11 candidates. One candidate gets 59% of the vote, the most moderate candidate. So there is energy, and I'm not saying there isn't energy. I think he ran I met with him. We talked about being mayor and things that you have to prioritize and stuff like that. We had a very good meeting. When I met with him, I said, okay, who's going to hate this meeting more, my rabbi or AOC? And I said, I've heard both sermons. I go with my rabbi's sermon. So I do. There is a lot of energy there, and he ran not only a good race, he ran a substantive race that caught people where they were. But I don't think when you look at the party as a whole, that's where I would say that's the only energy.
Let me interrupt the party question because I think there's more to ask on that. But specifically on governing, the poor people in this audience know I have this obsession with whether the people who become president actually have any of the skills to do the job. I think we've talked about this over time. On the mayoral front, if Mamdani wins, 34 years old, what's going to face him on his first day that a person who doesn't have experience running anything of the way you do as a mayor, what's going to face him and what's that challenge going to be like?
I want to be careful because he and I had an hour and a half at his request about being mayor. Before I get there, it's interesting you said the lead up. I couldn't have been happier when I was mayor, having been chief of staff and the other office positions I had.
Right.
But I said this once to President Obama. I said, I wish I was chief of staff. I wish I was mayor before I was chief of staff. While I was happy I was chief of staff before I was mayor, I think it would have given me a different perspective doing that job.
Wait, sorry, why?
No, I'm going to get to you. Rabbi, I'm going to get to your first question. We're not doing Talmud classes here, okay? So I don't want to break his confidence, so let me try to. I talked to him about, first of all, the 4 years go like this. Mm-hmm. You can't do everything. Yeah. You have to pick of the things that you ran on, what's an A and what's not. And that A has to be here. Now, I did that for an education. That to me was very, very important. Did right things, wrong things, whatever, but I would do whatever I had to improve the reading, math scores, graduation. I said, if it was me, your daycare is there. In all due respects, you're never going to open 5 grocery stores, even though you control all the zoning and all the building. Not going to happen. Now, we did a stuff on food deserts. I brought all the grocery store in, and I said, you got a 5-year plan. Include a food desert, it will be all 10 stores will be one application. Did that with the farmers markets. I said, you can do things to address what you want to address, but you're not going to be ordering lettuce on your 4th year. And this time is going to go fast. Second, you have to have phenomenal people running. You have to give them the loyalty to do it. I talked to him about something I started all the way back in President Clinton, weekly reports. On Friday at 5 o'clock, you have a 2-page from every cabinet member. On Monday at 8 a.m., they have it back with your comments. It keeps you fresh. They know you're monitoring and watching, but you're pushing them so they don't get caught off. I said, if you look at having gone through Clinton's transition, President Obama's transition, President Obama, I had the White House staff selected 6 weeks before we were sworn in. We were operating like a White House staff. Mm-hmm. There was no sidetrack on engaged in the military. The cabinet was confirmed. He signed the first bill, the Lilly Ledbetter legislation, first day. First week he signed children's health insurance. He signed his Recovery Act 3 weeks. The entire cabinet was in place 2 weeks later. And there were if you look at American history, there's always a decision you make in the first 6 months that haunt the rest of the term. Mm-hmm. President Bush does it in 9/11. Bill Clinton does it with a special prosecutor. None of that existed for President Obama. I said, pick what we in Chicago would call the 5th floor, the mayor's staff. Pick your staff, have them operating a month before you put your hand on the Bible. Those are some of the things, just as remembering an hour and a half.
Last question, maybe?
I was just getting started.
How important is the 2026 election? And beyond the shutdown, what should the Democrats be doing? Do they have the leadership in place? It's a fragmented moment. There's not going to be a presidential race. How much is hinging on that election?
Well, you don't want to be president if the Democrats don't flip the House in 2026. Thank you. So we're going to know a lot 1 week from today. And what I mean by that is you have Prop 50 in California, 2 governor's races in very important states in the presidential contest, state legislative races below that, 3 Supreme Court races in Pennsylvania, and then the New York mayor's race. Beyond winning and percentages, the political animal in me will say 3 things you got to look at. What is the Democratic turnout as a percentage to 2024? What is the Republican turnout? Who exceeded, who dropped? And do independents break 2-1, 60, 55, 45? Now, if you go through history, 1994, 2006, 2010, 2018, when one party controls both sides of Pennsylvania Avenue, there's a law of physics. Party opposition turnout is 20 to 25% better than the incumbent party. Independents break 2-1 against the incumbent party, and turnout among incumbent party is below the prior presidential. The thing and we won't know it election night, Tuesday, November 4th, but within 36 hours we'll know that data point across. You have Pennsylvania, battleground. New Jersey, probably the most battleground on the Atlantic coast. Virginia, you'll know and you'll know also California. And if the data builds a consensus that formula is in place, even though it's a year away, even though the president is trying to redistrict his way out of a problem. Today, the generic, I want to vote for a Democratic Congress is +9. Anything above +3 is a tsunami. And the reason he's doing all the redistricting is he's trying to build that wave crash as high as he can, because he knows, disagree with him, but he ain't a fool. He knows the size of this wave that's coming. And if the House flips, it's going to be a different presidency, and it will have a different America, and the Congress will wake up to being a co-equal branch of government.
Rahm Emanuel, thanks for coming on the Gabfest.
As we say here in Chicago, mazel tov on 20 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Great to see you. See you soon.
The Trump administration is sending Department of Justice observers to elections in California and New Jersey. There is the ferocious gerrymandering efforts that Rahm Emanuel was just talking about to grab seats in the midterm. There are efforts to gut the Voting Rights Act to grab still more seats. Meanwhile, President Trump is also teasing talk of a 3rd presidential term. And there is also a drumbeat of different legal challenges to different elements of elections, trying to change the way ballot boxes are handled, declaring mail-in ballots suspect, trying to change rules about accepting late ballots. When you look at the Trump presidency, there's never one battle happening. It's always like little fires everywhere. And I think that's the story we see with the president's efforts to undermine trust in elections and to advantage Republicans as he does that. So let's start with the most patently ridiculous and yet most consequential piece of this, which is the President Trump and a bunch of his allies, Steve Bannon most vociferously, have been teasing the idea of a 3rd term. So John, why has Trump been doing this when it appears like, if you look, I mean, Emily's going to correct us in a minute, but if you look at the Constitution and U.S. history, that it seems out of the question?
Well, I think it's a number of things. One, it's bait, right? So don't talk about the fact that his approval rating on the economy is in the 30s, that people blame him for high prices. The thing he was elected to do, he isn't doing. So it keeps the conversation where he wants it to be. It suggests, for some who are listening, that there's a constituency for him to run. And so implicit in the idea of a 3rd term is that he could win it, that his approval rating isn't at 30. and it's just a general, it's a distraction, and it allows you to kind of own the conversation. And it's a thing, again, that puts him at the center stage. And I think he enjoys that at a personal level. So I think, and it distracts Democrats. In distraction, it's not just us, but it's also, what Rahm is saying and what so many Democrats believe is basically talk about affordability from now until 2029. I mean, talk about prices, talk about home ownership, talk about jobs, talk about wages, and don't talk about anything else. So every nanosecond you're talking about third term, you're not talking about those other four things.
I mean, another thing it does for him is it makes him less of a lame duck. If the Republicans think he might really run, then the whole thing of moving on, letting other people have power, being irrelevant, that all dissipates, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like a real political advantage.
I think that's right, although I wonder about that because, as Rahm was saying about the instincts of the members of Congress, the reason they have all given up their institutional concerns is because they are worried about him and the voters he has control over. I think as long as he still has control over those voters, he's never a lame duck. He's a kingmaker. So that to me is, I think it's true, but he is such a singular
He needs that
figure.
less than
He
other
needs it less
presidents
than- yes,
would, because
right,
he
exactly.
has that hold. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
But Emily, so I think there's this idea, there's so many things with the Trump administration we're like, well, that cannot happen. That is an impossibility. It couldn't happen. And then
So
we find, and
many
now,
things.
we're in October, we're like, oh, that happened. It happened times 100, in fact. And there's a way in which this talk of a third term is, of course, it's bait. Of course, it's a distraction. But so many times Trump is he's speaking the narrative out loud. And he doesn't talk about a third term because he's not thinking about it. He talks about a third term because he's thinking about it. Is there any way in which the walls that hold up this two-term presidency are crumbleable?
So I want to talk about this without creating any doubt in anyone's mind that the 22nd Amendment prevents people from being president 3 times. It's completely clear that that is why it was passed. We know that history from after FDR's presidency. It is also true that the words they use in the amendment were that you can't be elected to a third term. It doesn't say run, and it doesn't say serve. And so I think that if Trump decides to go down this path, that distinction is one we are going to be hearing more about, because he's going to be having to make some kind of legal as well as political argument. And, he was asked the other day about this idea that Vance could run as president and he was run as vice president and they would flip. And he said, oh, that's too cute. I don't think I would do that. But, he also said he wouldn't destroy the East Wing of the White House a week before it was bulldozed.
I flew over that today. Shocking. Amazing, by the way. It's shocking to have flown over it. Go ahead.
I'm sure. So it just does seem like there are shenanigans that he could pull. And, one way to think about the Supreme Court right now is if this is the only thing the court prevents, well, maybe I would have a longer list than this. But this, to me, is sort of the ultimate blow to democracy because it's so incredibly clear, because it would, lurch us into the terrain of countries we would never want to be compared to. So I do want to reserve some faith that the Supreme Court would prevent this from happening. But I really don't want to find out the answer to that by having it tested.
Right, more chaos to the system.
Yeah.
When you look ahead, actually, Emily, to you again, to the 2026 election, what scenarios around undermining the trust in the election or undermining the actual conduct of the election worry you most?
You have to start with the gerrymandering because it is unusual, very unusual to have this kind of mid-decade effort. And it really, at least Texas and a few other states are going to proceed. And then there's this set of questions about whether the 5 seats in California will counter it and whether the voters in California are going to pass Prop 50, although it is improving in the polls, which is interesting because often you see initiatives go down rather than up. So interesting. And we'll know more. But, that's not all. One of the ways, obviously, of thinking about the National Guard in cities like Chicago is that we're all getting used to the idea that there are going to be troops around, and that even though there's a federal statute that says they can't come within a certain distance of polling places, that law will also just be sort of bulldozed through, and we'll all be wondering like how we got here, and people will feel intimidated about voting. And then, of course, there's the whole apparatus of after the vote. If it doesn't go Trump's way, the investigations. We came within a hair's breadth of that in a lot of ways in 2020, and it was the top officials in Trump's Justice Department who prevented that from happening, and those people are not there anymore because Trump decided those were the bad lawyers. He didn't want that kind of lawyer to be around.
Also, when you talk to the election integrity people, they say the more confusion there is anywhere around an election or the election process, the more that allows a bad actor, and we've seen President Trump do this, use the confusion to say, well, something was up, something funny was going on. So even the gerrymandering, in other words, gerrymandering for me but not for thee. So let's say New York gets the 11th district in New York, which there's a question over whether the Voting Rights Act was I think it's right. Is that right? The Voting Rights Act, whether the 11th district is in fact a representative, and they might be able to basically gerrymander the 11th to make a Republican seat a Democratic seat. That would be, even if the courts, which they would have to in New York, ratified that, it would be confusion enough for a bad actor to run in and say, well, it's not real because of this thing. And just multiply that by Indiana, Ohio, although those are Republican states. So multiply that by Virginia, New York, California.
What difference do you guys think it makes that Trump controls the Justice Department in a way he didn't in 2020?
Well,
that the Justice Department wouldn't go along with him, but he clearly will go along with him. What does the federal Justice Department, which shouldn't have really any doings in state elections, what might they be doing to
they're sending
interests?
Monitors to states that didn't ask for them, and that in itself is, certainly, it's an act of intimidation to start off with, that you're sending federal law enforcement, federal power into blue states to kind of send a sign.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm not sorry.
Okay.
But I guess I feel like that people are not intimidated out of voting in this country right now. And I don't think that there's, I think the sending of monitors to places and actually having troops is a thing that makes people want to exercise the vote more. I'm much more worried about the post facto than I am about the intimidation factor.
And in the post facto, what happens is they go, well, something must have been funny because those monitors were there to see it. But wait, you sent the monitors. This is what we saw happen in 2020. That basically they yelled fire, everybody was running out of the theater, and somebody said, wait, there's no fire in the theater. And they said, well, but wait, why then are all these people running out of the theater?
Yeah, yes. And even if election day is peaceful and everything is settled, that was certainly true in 2020. It was actually an incredibly peaceful, well-run election. Nothing's perfect, but relatively speaking. And Trump still believed the totally made up, concocted ideas that there had been voter fraud in Georgia in particular, and wanted to launch investigations. And so if the top officials in the Justice Department in the room at that moment don't stop him, then you will see Justice Department investigations. And it's hard to know exactly where that goes, right? Because they will not be credible. They will be very hard to imagine that they could have a kind of good faith motivation. But that doesn't mean they end right away. The skepticism that is totally justified about the Comey prosecution and the prosecution of Letitia James, those prosecutions are still in force. And the thing about an election is that if you throw up enough chaff over time, just the unsettled nature of it over weeks or months is a problem for the peaceful transfer of power and for the democracy.
Yeah. Do you guys think that Democrats have any tools for fighting back in advance of the election? Because it feels to me that most of the weaponry right now is on the side of the people who want to cause chaos and disruption and uncertainty, and that's generally the Republicans. What should Democrats be doing if they want to give themselves more opportunity to win and also make people trust in the system more?
This is what any out party would do given the current conditions. So what I wanted to ask Rahm was if the economy stupid still works as an electoral truth. Because if it does, the president is in bad shape. because as Rahm said, your team as an incumbent doesn't turn out, but the other team does. That's just in normal circumstances. But we have a situation in which people, when they go to the liquor store, aren't buying a fifth. They're buying the little small bottles because that's all they can afford. They're not buying a carton of cigarettes. They're buying one pack of cigarettes. We're seeing Hamburger Helper purchases, which might slightly be a TikTok thing, but also it's that people are stretching their food dollar in a way that suggests they're, in dire straits. Long-term unemployment is at pandemic levels. People who are employed but wish they were in any other kind of job is at pandemic level highs.
Or
had more hours. Like all of these signals, the defaults on car loans is at a recent record. That if you were a Democrat, basically talk about that stuff endlessly and just constantly, because it energizes your voters and it also meets those other voters who might be persuadable. And there's a lot of data. I mean, you can see it. It's happening every day.
But so don't talk about the election security. Don't talk about the threats to democracy. Like that's just bad politics, even if it's existential for the nation.
If I can't sell my soybeans because of tariffs that got the Chinese to not buy their soybeans, I want to talk about that more than gerrymandering.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, if Democrats can win, if the wave that Rahm was talking about really crests, then it gets harder to mess with the election, right? Because everyone can see and there's just more votes to lie about or try to toss. And then I think behind the scenes, election officials in all of the states, I hope, need to be as meticulous and documenting everything as possible. There are definitely some relatively highly placed people in government right now who are total election 2020 deniers, right? And so you need to, as much as possible, be fortifying yourself against the government, the federal officials who normally would be helping you. And that's going to be really important. And to try to be transparent, not to make an argument for winning an election, but so the people who are paying attention and who can get kind of obsessed can see what you're doing, if possible.
And you can imagine a good politician saying, they've got money at the Justice Department to send officials here to try to monkey with your elections, but they don't have enough money to extend SNAP benefits for 42 million people who don't have food, right? You use the one.
Argentina and health insurance.
Yes, I'm just channeling Rahm, but that's like it's so funny. This is what Clinton did that like for breakfast.
But I mean, do either of you worry? And I guess we won't know until all the math comes out that obviously there's going to be a Democratic wave in the sense that many Democrats are going to come out and vote. But if the country has been rejiggered and re-gerrymandered and districts have been cut up in this way, the number of competitive districts will be even smaller than it usually is. And so you could imagine a +9 for the Democrats in the total electorate without them even capturing the House because of how things have been.
Well, but remember that when you start cracking all the voters, when you're trying to win more seats, some of what you do is spread them a little more thin in a way that a wave actually can crest over. Depends.
Right, and they only have to pick up 3. The non-incumbent party or the non-White House party usually picks up 20 some odd. Now we're a lot more sorted, and there are fewer open seats. But Texas and California will be a wash. So they probably won't get anything in Indiana. So, the number of seats they'll be able to gerrymander may not be huge. So we'll just have to see, as you say, in the end. But it may not be big enough to overcome a wave.
And if the Supreme Court really guts Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, maybe it'll do it late enough that they won't be able to redistrict those seats.
Oh, right. The entire South.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to our third topic, which is a really self-involved, self-indulgent one, but it's our show.
But hopefully it'll be fun.
No, it's going to be deeply moving.
Oh my God.
So we've done the show. We actually had a very funny conversation about the topic we're going to have when we were walking to lunch. We were walking back from lunch today because we decided we were going to talk about what stuck with us from doing the show. Like we've done 1,000+ episodes, and I've heard John talk about all kinds of presidents that I didn't know about and vice presidents I didn't know about, and Emily has tutored me on the law 100 times, but yet when I wake up in the morning, I can't remember anything. And so we were all like, what do we actually remember from 20 years of this? And we're going to try to remember the things that have really stuck with us.
In fact, David has the best memory of the three of us, like by a long shot. So if he doesn't remember anything, we're really in trouble.
But also very meta that we are having this conversation as we walk back from lunch, because the conceit of the original show, we all used to go to when we all worked at Slate in Washington, we walked to a place called Breadline.
Yeah.
And which is no longer around, right?
Which is really terrible.
Yeah, it's sad that it's not. Anyway, it was a really 5 or 6 block walk. It was not short, but not too long. Anyway, the Andy Bowers, who initiated the show, basically said, we want a show that captures what you talk about on your walks to lunch.
Okay.
Well, here we
let's try to remember.
There we go.
So okay.
At least I remember how this damn thing started.
How it came to be. What is something, Emily, that has stuck with you? Some idea that has stuck with you? Something somebody said on the show? Something you said on the show that has really kind of resonated with you down the years when you look back?
Well, one thing I really remember strongly was that John McCain picked Sarah Palin and his running mate, 10 minutes before we were taping one day. It was really fast. And I had no idea who Sarah Palin was.
Neither of us had ever heard of her. Ever heard of her.
Ever. I was like, what? How can that be? I have no idea who that person is. And John knew exactly who Palin was, but not just like, oh, she's whatever she was from Alaska. Senator?
She was governor.
See, I still don't even know who Sarah Palin was. Anyway, it wasn't just that he knew who she was. His take on her persona, her charisma, her weaknesses, what she was going to bring to the ticket. Like, whatever he said in the 5 minutes he talked about her, that was like all I needed to know the entire time. I still don't know how you did that.
I remember I was in an airport flying, because it was on the eve of the convention, which was in Minneapolis, and I was going to tape Washington Week, which was doing a live show from there, and I was like, we were taping the show. I was on the phone in the airport right before the plane was about to leave.
But you totally had it all. And so why did you know so much about her? Like, you really had a lock on who she was.
Well, I did cover politics. Though that might not have been in evidence often.
No. But I mean, it was kind of obscure.
It did bring me occasionally into no, here's why.
You could have not known. I feel like that would have been a reasonable thing
I
not
think for
to
20
know.
years I've proved what I could have not known. She was, I don't remember what I said at the time. I'm glad you think it made sense. She checked, this is such a cliche, she checked a lot of boxes. That's like a conservative woman, and so forth. McCain obviously had a kind of macho, so you had to balance that. I mean, it was just kind of like obvious. The big gaping hole, which I'm sure we talked about, which was a problem, is that his entire argument against Obama was you have no experience. So if you get, in a position of danger or power or national security threat, you wanted to know what to do. Well, then he went and picked a vice president who didn't have any of that experience either.
What is something you remember, John?
Why are we going first?
I know.
Oh, well.
Because he's gonna wallop us with something.
I know, it's really true.
I mean, the things that I remember are the unpleasant arguments we had about.
Unpleasant.
I don't like the arguments.
John doesn't
arguing is
because I grew up in a super competitive house, and like where arguments were. It was not good. This was not. And so that gets called on. Like, my brother went to the same high school that David went to, and that school had a lot of that like energy, and that energy, man. And I used to be a.
John's acting like, I went to a low-key school. It's just called Sidwell Friends. It's literally like
right, let's not do like Washington Prep School.
Yeah,
it's
like
not our best
he went to a Washington Prep
but they
school
were,
that the Obama kids and the Clinton
but
kids went to.
I
went to the Washington Prep school that the Bush kids went to.
This is the kind of argument I don't like.
No, but the point is, he's not wrong in that regard. But the point is that like. The culture of the all-boys school at St. Albans was very close to the culture of my family, which created in me a thing where, like, all arguments, no matter how small, perhaps particularly the small ones, were fought to the death. And so that, and there was a long period of time, hopefully less often now, that Ann and I would go out to dinner, and I couldn't, some argument would happen, and then suddenly I'd be in the kitchen with the chef's knife going after some poor nice person who just said, maybe George Washington wasn't a great general. And that was a super unpleasant way to be. And so this triggers some of that. But the arguments are, was it Tim Geithner who had a tax problem?
Yes.
And I can't remember which side of the argument I was on. The John Edwards argument was fine because I wasn't in that. It was you and Bill Smee and Emily.
We were arguing about whether his infidelities
mattered. And I think I was just a spectator, but I remember that because it was absolutely epic. And we used to record in this tiny little room that was no bigger than this carpet here. And so there were the three of us, and then the producer, Bill Smee, who was monk-like in his quality of silence. Except in this. And all of the years that he listened in silence erupted in this moment where I can't remember what his position was, but it was vehement. And then we had a wicked argument at the beginning of COVID. Do you remember that?
No.
About,
what
you
did we
don't?
argue about?
No.
Oh.
Now I want to go listen to this.
I won't say who held what positions, but essentially the question was whether people would respond to the pandemic by basically just trying to care for their immediate needs and the issues of their family, or whether it would excite in them a more public-minded push for reform and kind of fixing of government as a way to respond to the pandemic.
Which side? Who was on what side?
I don't know. I'm sure I was right.
All right. That was good. Now we can go listen to that.
We gotta get that one.
Yeah, David, what is your memory?
Okay, I wrote a few of them down. So first of all, the thing I remember most is Emily talking about how she would not call the police because the police never help. And she said this, I looked it up, it was in 2014, and I had never even contemplated this idea before, and I thought it was so ridiculous, and I remember deriding you.
You did. You were like, what are you talking about?
And then about a week later, I was like, oh. Now I get it. Maybe a month later, it was Michael Brown, and Ferguson happened, and it was, that was a real light bulb moment for me.
Yeah, right. It's funny how one always, or at least I have the tendency to kind of self-moderate, because then one of my kids had his house broken into a couple times last year. I was like, okay,
did you call the police?
There's a circumstance in which it's a good idea to call the police. It's a little too bad that your roommate was asleep and didn't call them faster. Anyway, thank you for that. So I have one about, I feel like, David, one of the things you bring to the show is that you are willing to say things out loud that lots of people are thinking about but can't quite figure out how to express. And one of them for me is, years ago, you were talking about asylum and worrying that it had gotten kind of out of control, that there were so many people seeking asylum, like what really happened to them while they were waiting to find out whether they were getting asylum. Could this law that was really created for refugees, for people who were seeking political havens, be applied to all these people who are really coming to the United States for work? And you were just willing to push at that, and also to express sympathy for people who live in communities where, because there's a big arrival of immigrants, the composition of the community changes. Maybe there are tons of kids at the school. Maybe people are speaking another language. It just feels foreign to them. And I wanted to believe that asylum was going to keep functioning as a concept, and was sort of resistant to the idea that there was going to be the backlash that there has really been. And I think it was just really really that you were banging away at that, even though I was resisting every step.
That quality of either saying the thing that people are thinking, or just not being afraid to play devil's advocate or sharpen an argument. It is I think it's one of the, if not the most crucial part of the show.
Absolutely.
It really is. So it's.
Well, I do.
Totally agree.
Thank you. That's nice of you to say. I mean, I do think that the show works basically because I don't know anything. And And I think you two are both such subject matter experts and so fluent and wise about these areas that you talk about. And it's useful to, I think it is, if I weren't a little bit that way, honestly, like it would be, they should stop paying me because there's no other reason for me to be here.
So if you really learn a whole lot about something, that would be bad.
Learning something would be really bad.
No, it's true. It's true about asking questions.
Another thing I really remember, so I love our conundrum shows so much, and I think they're so fun, and they're also usually, so we had Dwayne Betts, who's a old friend of Emily's,
poet,
who did a conundrum show with us, and the conundrum someone asked was, where would you hide an elephant? And Dwayne said, in my neighborhood, because no one would bother me, no one would ask about it, and that answer, it really struck me. I don't know why. I can't really explain why, but for years I've been thinking about the idea that he was getting at all sorts of things at once. This is a neighborhood which no one is paying attention to because it's a neglected neighborhood. This is a neighborhood where people, because there's sort of fear, apprehension, there's maybe weak social ties, or that people are just not in other people's business, and there's a kind of inability to or unwillingness to get involved because of bad experiences that people have happened, and just this is a neighborhood which the outside world is just not giving a shit about, and I think about that all the time. Where would you hide an elephant? And it's like, oh yeah.
I have another one which picks up on. Oh, this is going to be so nice. What's I don't know where we're going to go from here, but John was talking about bravery and you singing on stage, taking voice lessons and then singing on stage is an amazing thing that you did, really.
That was in our Wisconsin show, right?
Yeah, and it was taking a different kind of risk than the intellectual risks that you take.
That was the scariest moment of my entire life.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wow, that was amazing.
That was great.
No.
Have we indulged ourselves enough?
We've indulged ourselves enough. Strodes. I never heard the word Strodes before Maren Kogan came on.
That was great.
That was an incredible concept. I bet
that wasn't our idea, by the way, but we appreciated it. We glommed onto it
also,
successfully.
In the same conundrum show with Reggie with Dwayne Betts, there was a question which was, what if you could only brush your teeth once should you brush at the end of the day?
I think about that all the time still.
You think about that all the time?
Because it's not resolved.
No,
you did?
I gave the
There's
wrong
an
answer. Yeah, I said I would brush my teeth at the end of the day, and then I realized, no, you have to brush your teeth at the beginning of the day. And I've regretted, I've literally, for 4 years, every time I brush my teeth in the morning, I'm like,
I got that wrong.
I got it wrong.
Well, luckily you're not bound by your wrong answer.
Well, obviously fish or a tree has to be. It was fish or a tree, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
we had a long fight about that.
Yeah.
But a pleasant fight, a little, excursion fight.
All right, let's go to cocktail chatter. When you are having a delicious half acre or some other fine Chicago beer, John Dickerson, what will you be chattering about?
I wrote it on here, so I'm not playing Angry Birds or anything. Okay.
Does Angry Birds still exist? Does Angry Birds still exist? Do people still play it? No.
All right. So in 1938.
Wow. Can it be 1838, Daddy? Can it be 1838?
If anybody is in need of a nap or
I sometimes do
or has to go to the restroom, you're out of luck. Anyway, on October 30th, which is tomorrow, millions of radio listeners nationwide heard this bulletin from this very city, and it went like this. Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News at 20 minutes before 8 Central Time. Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. Then they went back to the dance music. But then there was another bulletin. It is reported at 8:50, a huge flaming object believed to be a meteorite fell on a farm in the neighborhood of Grover's Mill, New Jersey. The cylinder opened to reveal Martian creatures that unleashed a heat ray, killing 40 people, including state troopers. The Martians' tripod machines advanced to New York City. Now the smoke's crossing 6th Avenue, 5th Avenue. 100 yards away, there was a sound then of just a body falling. And then a radio operator. Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone? So by now, you all probably know that this is the famous War of the Worlds broadcast, which was broadcast on October 30th, 1938. But at the time, listeners didn't know that, and that they all thought it was a real news bulletin, although, and I think we all know what happened, or we think we know what happens next, but it's more interesting than that. But first, back to the panic. I thought when I started looking at this that like it was overblown. So can we have the first headline? So the next day in the newspaper, it was massive front page news. So radio fake scares nation, Mars invasion in radio skit terrifies U.S., War of the Worlds radio broadcast causes panic. Along the eastern seaboard, thousands called the police station. The New York police headquarters got 2,000 calls in 15 minutes. The New York Times, show the Times headline if we have it. The Times reported that the New York Times got 875 calls that evening. More than 20 families rushed out of their houses with wet handkerchiefs and towels over their faces to flee from what they believed was to be a gas raid. Some people were moving household furniture in front of the doors. CBS's main station got 1,700 letters in the few days after the broadcast was aired. 1,400 were sent to the Mercury Theater staff, 600 contacts to the Federal Communications Commission, which some of those letters, they asked them to shut down CBS. Claude Stewart from Meadville, Pennsylvania, wrote and said, Mercury Theater of the Air not only is in bad taste, but it was dangerous. It stopped my wife and several other women, confined them to their beds from shock and hysteria. The funny thing is that Orson Welles, who was the lead actor in this, thought it was going to be a total disaster. The scriptwriter said it was terribly dull. One of the actors said it was lousy. It was going to put people to sleep. Another actor said it would probably bore you to death. So that didn't happen. But then the next day, Welles, because it was such a phenomenon, he had to have a hastily called press conference. Picture, please. So what I love about this hastily called press conference is it contains two things from historical pictures that I love. Men in hats, and there's a good representation of hats, and then the person to Welles's left is chomping on a pipe. He's just doing his work, but let no time pass when I cannot enjoy some of that weed from the South Farthing. And so he's, anyway, and it was at that press conference in which when Welles was asked, would he do it again? And, when he was expected to say that he would back down, he said, I won't say I won't follow this technique again, as it is a legitimate art form. So he was supposed to go back off, but he didn't. Now, they did a study of the people who panicked. And why did they panic? Well, the announcer had studied the Hindenburg script when the Hindenburg crashed, so it sounded like what they expected bulletins to sound like. Munich had been signed, and there was war brewing in Europe, so people were used to bulletins happening in the middle of shows. And the third thing is that the actors were so good, they kept saying, I can't believe it, I've never seen this before, and people believed it. But here are the two things that really interested me about which I didn't know. Those headlines aren't really, this is the difference for me between a storyteller, which is me, and a historian, which is not me. So it's a good story, you got those headlines and all that, but what the historian will tell you is that the newspapers wanted to goose up the idea that radio had created mass hysteria because the radio and newspaper were in a massive competition for who was going to deliver the news. So the newspapers wanted to exaggerate the story to undermine their new radio competitors. So that's really important context when you see all those headlines and think, oh, well, guy like me would be like, oh, people must have really been freaked out. No, the publishers of the newspapers were freaked out, and they wanted everybody to think that radio was weird. Other piece of context, all those letters I mentioned to you, here are the actual numbers. The 1,700 people who wrote in to the CBS station, 1,100 of those letters were complimentary. 91% of the letters received by the Mercury Theater staff were positive. And the same was true of the letters to the to the FCC. Indeed, MB Wales of Gastonia, North Carolina, suggested to the FCC that if you had taken them broadcasters to task over this broadcast, won't you also have to stop fairy tales and stories about Santa Claus to keep a gullible public from becoming excited?
So we remember this in a way that was manipulated. We kind of remember the propaganda about it as opposed to the actual response.
Exactly. We remember the propaganda, not the genuine response. And even the academic who studied the panic kind of studied the wrong thing, or studied only a sliver. Didn't study the people who weren't panicked but who were psyched.
Why do you think no one has ever pulled off something that good again? I mean, there's this one example. It's amazing. We talk about it all the time. Everyone immediately knew what you were referring to, and yet here we are, 80.
I mean, should we be glad that nobody's pulled that off again?
There was this one guy who trafficked kind of in reality style stuff who convinced 70 some odd million people that an election was stolen.
Don't be so sanctimonious, bro. I mean...
David was enjoying himself, and now we have to worry again.
No, it's like it was an amazing episode of people being pulled into a drama, and as it brought a lot of people joy. 1,100 of them wrote complimentary letters to CBS about it, and yet no one has managed to do it again.
I'm trying to think if that's true. Has no one?
I mean, there have been some big stunts.
But Al Capone's vault was the opposite. It was a big nothing burger. This was a nothing burger that was turned into a national phenomenon.
Blair Witch had a little bit of that, but it was
crop circles.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, they think it didn't become a national thing, but it was a mystery that. That's a really. Don't you feel like we're on the cusp of it, though?
Oh God.
Yeah.
What about why?
Not sure I think we can handle it right now.
Yeah.
All right. What's your chatter,
Moving
Emily?
along. My chatter, you'll be shocked all to hear, is about the Justice Department. So I'm going to start with the happy part of my Justice Department week. I really feel like this is all I think about is the Justice Department lately. So on a positive note, this week, 100 former high-up Justice Department officials all got together and signed a brief saying that it is wrong for James Comey to be prosecuted, that this is a form of vindictive prosecution, and they came out against it in force in this friend of the court brief. And I am just impressed at that act of unity right now, because I think that law world, the kind of legal establishment, has been having trouble putting their names on things that in some way really criticize President Trump. And so the number of names on this brief, the fact that they are lots of really important people from both parties is really crucial. And one of the people who put the brief together is named Peter Keisler. He was an acting attorney general under George W. Bush, and he retired last year from a big firm and then came back and started a firm called the Washington Legal Group that basically exists to represent people who've been fired. And he was saying last week that, when you look back on the firms that Trump went after with his executive orders, some of them caved and settled, and Peter was saying they're really okay. And some of them sued, and Peter was saying they're also fine and have had a morale boost from having stood up to Trump. And he was arguing, and I think this makes sense, that the real effect in the Justice Department has been, or not the Justice Department, in kind of big law, has been all the work that's not happening. That if you look at the travel ban, for example, you see the 50 biggest law firms represented making various arguments about why that was a problem, legally speaking, but you don't see the same kind of out in force effort with regard to the birthright citizenship cases. And he was also saying that he's talked to people at firms where they're not even taking paid immigration work right now, which is really shocking when you think about how lawyers are supposed to always represent clients. That's so core. So I saw this brief as a really good sign, a sense that big law could still, that the legal establishment could still come together. And yet, today, I can't help but mentioning there was another bad sign at the Justice Department, which is that 2 prosecutors got fired, put on leave. They got put on leave, and they're sin was that they were prosecuting Taylor Taranto, who brought a whole bunch of guns in a van to Barack Obama's house. And so he was charged and convicted of illegal possession of a gun and tons of ammunition. And these prosecutors wrote a sentencing memo. And one of the things they put in the sentencing memo was that Taranto had seen a Truth Social post from Trump, which had what Trump said was Obama's address. And so the reason his house address, and so the reason this was in the sentencing memo was to just factually explain that that's how Taranto knew where to go. And it was a totally publicly available fact. And for that, and maybe, I don't know, for asking for 2.5 years of sentencing, of prison time, these two prosecutors are put on leave because the White House got mad. And that is just so far. Rahm was talking earlier, it's like one more sign of how far we have come in the last year in terms of just violating all these separations between the White House and politics and law.
My chatter, first of all, I got a log roll. CityCast is launching in 2 new cities, so we launch in CityCast Twin Cities this week, and we're launching in CityCast Seattle next week. So if you are in the Twin Cities or in Seattle, or you know people who are in the Twin Cities in Seattle, tell them to check it out. The first episode of Twin Cities I listened to this morning was amazing.
That's great.
My actual chatter, though, is I'm interviewing Jimmy Wales of Wikipedia for Gabfest Reads later this week, and so I've been reading a lot about Wikipedia, and when you read about Wikipedia these days, you also end up reading about Grokpedia, which I don't know if you guys have heard, which is the Elon Musk thinks Wikipedia is woke, and so he's had Grok create a Wikipedia knockoff called Grokpedia, and so I went on Grokpedia because I was like, what's up with Grokpedia? It is, my friends, hilarious. Emily, how many sisters do you have?
I have 3 sisters.
No, you do not have 3 sisters. You have 2 sisters. Who did you clerk for?
Judge Kermit Lopez.
You did not. You clerked for Judge Betty B. Fletcher.
Huh, that's so interesting. I kind of thought about doing that, but that's not what happened.
It is. That's interesting.
I'm not sure she really thought about that, I should say.
I learned that I am the host of the CityCast DC podcast, which is great.
Oh. Then you don't
I
even
learned
have to
that my
do your
birthday
work.
is January 13th, which I
is
did
not
not know.
true.
I didn't know that. But Grok assured me that it fact-checked everything about me in the last 2 days. So I guess my birthday is January 13th. But what's really interesting about Grokpedia is I tease it, and of course, but anything that starts is going to be filled with errors. But Grokpedia is filled with errors in a way that I feel is probably fatally flawed, which is that it has decided that it's going to be an encyclopedia by being endless. So the entry about Emily is an interesting person. She's definitely an interesting person. The entry about Emily is 9,000 words long. It is filled with
longer than the longest article I've ever been allowed to write.
Baslan was elected a fellow of the American Academy of
okay.
Arts and Sciences 2019, recognizing your contributions to legal journalism and analysis. The honor, shared with Yale colleague Tracy Mears. Like, why do we need to know?
I don't know.
Shared with Tracy Mears. Like, Tracy Mears, you don't even know who that person is.
I
Like,
do.
Yeah. But the
And
whole
she's
thing,
from Chicago.
it just goes on. And you realize that actually the great strength of Wikipedia is what it doesn't include, is that it includes what is relevant and important and distills it. And the Grok, for all that it is getting, has 110 references for Emily Baslan, it has like 58 references for David Plotz. It just can't decide what really matters because it doesn't have human judgment about what really matters. It's making a lot of guesses and inferences based on just how language patterns, not this sort of thoughtful humans who are in a community where because they're in a community where there is reward for excellence of work and thoughtfulness and care and their set of standards, they end up writing well and writing concisely about things.
So, but not all the large language models have this flaw, right? ChatGPT does summaries. Like they may be banal. They may not be human level all the time. Depends what you ask. They may make mistakes. John and I have both had this experience recently. But they're concise. So I feel like this is the pedia part of Grokpedia, right? That's being programmed to be too voluminous.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it could be fixed. I don't think this is ultimately.
But it's kind of great this one is getting it
It's great
so
that
wrong.
it's all messed up now.
Yeah.
It's great that it's all
Fine.
messed up now. Yeah. We also have listener chatters. We have really good ones this week. Please keep them coming. Email them to us at gabfest@slate.com. And our listener chatter this week comes from Will Dixon in Rhode Island.
Hey Gabfest, this is Will Dixon from Rhode Island, and I have what I think is some great seasonally appropriate chatter. I think it's important that you know about vampire bats. I keep learning new facts about them that floor me via the research of my sister May and the other scientists at the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute in Panama. I know this needs to be concise, so I'll have to leave out their incredible low-frequency hearing, so precise that they can tell humans apart just by the sound of their breath. And I can't get into their teeth, which are so razor-sharp that people have suffered cuts while handling their skulls in museums. Nor can I get into the fact that they have independently evolved the ability to canter and gallop across the ground using their wings and thumbs as front legs. So what you really have to know is how they are a great model for how a species can evolve the ability to create societies. So blood is not a very nutritious food, and without feeding for several days, a bat will die. Plus, they're generally not successful in finding food every day. Vampire bats live in big colonies, and given those constraints, you'd expect some of the bats to die of starvation every day. But they don't because, and this is the crazy part to me, they have developed a social welfare system. Bats who are at risk of starving signal their hunger, and other bats come and feed them. However, there are bats who cheat and cry for food when they aren't at risk of starving, and police bats who catch these cheaters and ostracize them. In order for this society to work, vampire bats form complicated social networks to build trust. At first, they gradually build up relationships with the potential friend bat by testing the water with low-cost investments, like grooming each other, and then they work up to higher-cost investments, like sharing blood. It's a fascinating way to see how evolution can influence the creation of societies that can help us learn more about our own. Thanks.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That had a lot of information.
Okay, that's all for our episode this week. We also have a bonus episode in your feed. We'll be taking questions from our audience here in Chicago. Slate Plus members get lots of great stuff for their subscriptions. They get bonus episodes. They get discounts on live shows like this one. They get to hang out with us at Cocktail Party, which was really fun. We got to do that. That was really great.
Absolutely.
So if you're a member, thank you. Or if you're not a member, you can subscribe to Slate Plus directly from the Political Gabfest show page on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or visit slate.com/gabfestplus to get access wherever you listen. That's our show for today. The Political Gabfest is produced by Nina Porzuki. Our researcher is Emily Ditto. The magnificent Katie Rayford pulled this live show together. Jake Sorgen produced the show here in Chicago. Our theme music is by They Might Be Giants. Ben Richmond is senior director for podcast ops. Mia Lobel is executive producer for Slate Podcasts, and Hillary Fry is editor-in-chief of Slate. For Emily Bazelon and John Dickerson, for our live show audience here at the Park West in Chicago, I'm David Plotz. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.